As plans are put in motion and characters begin to move towards their goals, they will come to question both themselves and others as new conflicts continue to arise, all the while wondering what the strings of fate have in store for them, and if a few of those strings might not be manipulated by someone behind the scenes. With that being said, I will say spoiler warning for those who have not seen episode 3 of Volume 8 just yet. I will not be showing the episode or any clips from it in this video, simply images of the episode and analyzing the events that take place. I will leave a link in the description below so you guys can go to Rooster Teeth first, watch the episode there, and support the series that we all love. Now, the episode itself starts off with the two bride having ended for Ruby, Weiss, Blake, Nora, Penny, and May. And a few of them aren't exactly pleased with the way that it turned out. Blake in particular, not exactly wanting to do that ever again, and of course Weiss having the start of the ride happening a bit unexpectedly. And she made sure to let Nora know that that wasn't okay. But Nora's still pretty happy with the way that it turned out overall. They are now in Atlas, in the military compound, and now need to find a way to get to the terminal so that they can access it and get the clearance code for Amity. So May, being a bit inconsiderate to Penny, says, "Where to, Robo-Girl?" Not addressing her by her name, but Penny makes sure to correct her. And we see that Penny is actually able to visualize the floor plan to the compound itself, including where each of the military personnel is currently located, where they're headed, etc. So very useful to have Penny around for sure, as she can just guide them through the compound, avoid as many obstacles as possible, and get them exactly where they need to go. Likely because Penny still has some security clearance for Atlas that she's able to do this, as she wasn't able to do this in Robin's rally when Tyrion attacked. Also, with the amount of people there, she probably wasn't able to visualize clearly where everyone was and lost track of Tyrion, but here she is able to freely. And so May activates her semblance of invisibility field, cloaks them all, and they're on their way. Until they get to the elevator, then they encounter a bit of a snag, as the elevator is a fairly enclosed space, and as they're going up, a couple soldiers get on. And we see that May actually has very good control of her semblance. The invisibility field that she created back in Volume 7, it looked like it was more of a spherical shape, and we weren't clear if she could manipulate that shape of it at all. But she's able to alter the shape and mold it more to the people that she's trying to cloak and the area in which she's trying to move. So when they get to their floor, they're able to sneak past the soldiers without any difficulty, and of course Nora, being Nora, hits all the buttons on the way out, so the soldiers are going to be left on that elevator for a little while. And then they reach a security checkpoint where they need clearance to be able to bypass it. And so R2-D2 Penny, or Penny 2D2, R2 Penny 2, Penny 2.0 is able to pull a microchip from her finger just like R2-D2 does in the Star Wars movies and bypass the security system. Plug directly into it, bring up Pietro's credentials, and the security door opens. Very useful ability to have, and Ruby's quite impressed by that. Though I'm sure using Pietro's credentials, a scientist with high-level clearance who has defected from Atlas won't cause any problems. Not like the military leaders would put any notifications or red flags on that, so I'm sure it'd be fine. So they bypass this security checkpoint, and the next thing they have to get through is the command center of the Atlas military, where there's tons of military personnel, and it's going to be quite difficult to do. May expresses that her semblance would not be able to maneuver through that. She still has to create an invisibility field. She can't actually mold it to, like, people's bodies or that specifically. She still has to cover all of them, be connected, etc., so odds are they would be discovered by using that. But Penny has the solution. She knows how Ruby's semblance works better than she does, and, well, is able to use that. So Penny explains that Ruby's semblance actually breaks herself down to a molecular level, thus disregarding her mass and allowing her to move quickly. So, if she used her semblance on others, all of them would be broken down to their molecular level and be able to move quickly through there and hopefully be undetected. And Blake, of course, teases Ruby that she discovered this before you did, right? And Ruby, of course, retorted saying, "Hey, she knew you were a Faunus before I did, but the thing is, Ruby should have known this already. She used her semblance on Nora back in Volume 4, and she used her semblance on Weiss back in Volume 3. She already knows she can use her semblance on others and allow them to move quickly, and so regardless of how exactly it works, even though Penny has more understanding of this, I feel like Ruby should have known that she could have used her semblance on everyone. Still, they end up doing just that. There is one little thing that I noticed that I do want to point out. It's likely nothing, but it may be a hint at things to come. When Penny was giving her description of how RWBY's semblance worked and showed how she was able to maneuver everyone around all the Atlas soldiers, they showed one image of one Atlas soldier, and it had pink eyes, which could be hinting at that maybe Neo has already infiltrated the Atlas military compound. Likely not the case, likely nothing, but the fact that that soldier had pink eyes is kind of standing out to me in some regard. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below, because Salem's forces are definitely already at work behind the scenes. Before everyone is able to put their plan into motion, though, we see Ironwood again, as he's entering his own little control center where we see him working with Watts, as Watts is typing away at a keyboard, as Ironwood persuaded him to work with or for Ironwood. We saw that last episode, as well as the numerous guns that are pointing at Watts as he's working. So lots of encouragement there. But I'm guessing Watts is quite willing to work with Ironwood at this point. Watts and Ironwood working together is something that a lot of people predicted in the comments below my last review, and something that I wanted to make a video on before this, but this week was a bit hectic. Honestly, this is no surprise, as both of them have quite overlapping goals at this point. Ironwood needs the Winter Maiden to be able to access the vault and obtain the Relic of Creation. Watts needs this too in service of his master, Salem, but also, he hates Pietro and would love the chance to get back at him. Considering Pietro's project was chosen over his, well, this is an opportunity where both Ironwood and Watts' goals align, where Watts could hack Penny, Pietro's prized creation, and get back at him that way, as well as getting the Winter Maiden, which would be beneficial for both of them. The relic is going to be removed, and then they can fight over it after that happens, but for right now, it's all aligning. But Watts notices that Pietro's credentials are being used, so someone must be running around the Atlas compound. Because of course, Pietro's credentials would be flagged. Using them is probably not the greatest idea, though I'm guessing they didn't have access to anyone else with that high of clearance, so they pretty much had to, and now they need to move quickly. So we cut back to the group as the alarms are going off, and now they are pretty much trapped. Penny realizes that all of the tubes that they took to get here are now closed off, so they're going to need a different way out. May points out that she saw a hangar on the way there, so she could just hijack a ship, and so they could all make an escape before they get caught. Penny insists that they are so close to finishing their goal, though. They should just push forward, accomplish that, and then escape. So they're going to break off. May's going to go get the ship and wait for everyone to make their escape. But before she goes, they need a distraction to get through the control center, as now that the alarms have been raised, everyone is more aware of everything going on around them. And so they decide to ruin a man's whole career. Poor Bill is becoming a sacrifice. Out of the invisibility field, someone sticks out their foot and trips the poor man. So he sends his coffee flying, landing on one of the control panels as well as one of his co-workers. So not only did they likely get Bill fired, they also made it so one of his co-workers doesn't have the ability to have children anymore. So yeah, two people aren't going to be in the greatest of states after this. But regardless, Salem's still outside with the army of Grimm. There's going to be a lot of people who may not survive this in general. Anyways, this is enough of a distraction that RWBY is able to use her semblance on everyone else, get them through quickly, and they are able to get through undetected. One thing we do see, though, that I find quite interesting is that a sign is pointed out by one of Bill's co-workers as he's getting scolded for not listening. No food and drink in the control center, which pretty much makes sense considering there's a lot of important technology, etc. But on this poster, it's a picture of food and everything, and then water and a Grimm shark underneath. I don't really see the necessity of having a Grimm shark there unless it could be a hint at something else to come. Possibly something we will see in a later volume, a Grimm shark as they are maybe traveling to Vacuo by boat or something like that. Because we'll have to see if the Elysian ships, if there's going to be any left after this point, or technology's hacked, or what's going to end up happening, but I wouldn't be surprised if they have to take a boat to Vacuo and there's a Grimm shark that we end up seeing by the end of it. A giant enemy that they have to defeat. Or possibly Salem has a number of Grimm flying sharks. That would be interesting too, but I think this might be hinting at something else. So then our group is able to make it to the control center pretty much unimpeded, until they get to the electrified door that they need to bypass. Penny is able to do this using the security access she has, and so they are able to get in, which no one is there guarding it, as it's supposed to be a very secure place with a high level of security clearance. So once they get in, the door is re-electrified, and they're pretty much safe from anyone else unless they have the clearance to get in. Penny goes and sits at the chair at the computer, and we see that Pietro is able to remote access Penny and take complete control of her. I'm sure that's not going to come up again, that someone else might be able to hack into that frequency or access that function in any way, shape, or form and just completely be able to take control of Penny in any way. I'm sure it's nothing, but anyways, Pietro is able to do that, and we see a little conversation between Nora, Weiss, and Blake, as they are showing a bit of concern for what's happening between their friends. Blake exclaims that she's never seen Ruby and Yang fight like this before. Weiss, relating it to her own experience with her sister, Winter, says that sometimes sisters have very different viewpoints on what they think is right. Nora chimes in, saying that all of them should be fine. Jean, Oscar, and Yang have all grown so much and are very reliable. I'm sure they'll be okay. Notably, though, she leaves out mentioning Ren, which both Blake and Weiss pick up on. And this causes Nora to confess that she doesn't really understand him anymore. She feels like she knows him less now than she did before. And she doesn't know if that's her fault or his fault, and she's very confused about the entire situation. But Blake points out something that is very crucial, not only for the characters in RWBY, but a lesson that everyone should take to heart in our world alike. That when you are with someone for so long, they become a part of you, but they are only a part. You can't forget about the rest. You can't lose sight of yourself either. And this brings up a core conflict of Nora as well, that she doesn't really know who she is without Ren. But I think that she does. She just hasn't realized it yet. Everyone else knows her. We, as the viewers, know her. She is the eccentric, happy little ginger that we've all come to know and love. We saw that earlier in the episode when she hit all of the buttons in the elevator when she didn't need to. Her love of cake, her love of sweets, she is just a very happy and positive person. A lot of that change was brought upon because of her relationship with Ren. We've seen how much she's been able to grow throughout the RWBY series, from when we first saw her in her backstory, from the scared child that she was. She has grown so much, and she is certainly her own person. It's just she hasn't been able to see that for herself just yet, but I'm sure she will come to understand that by the end of Volume 8, hopefully, and before anything bad happens to her or Ren, but, we'll have to wait and see on that one. At that point, though, they are interrupted by Pietro finishing his downloads, and he says that when Amity Coliseum starts its launch sequence, it will try to connect to Ironwood's terminal, but now it will connect to Penny instead. So if Penny was to be hacked or accessed by some outside source, then they would be able to see this launch sequence incoming as well and possibly be able to interfere with it. I don't really think that's going to go well for their plan, but we'll have to see on this as well. And then the topic comes up about Pietro wanting Penny to stay on Amity Coliseum when it goes up, along with him and Maria. So from the sounds of it, Pietro and Maria are okay with sacrificing themselves to get this up in the air. Is that the fate that we're going to go with for Pietro and Maria? Because there's no oxygen in the atmosphere. I doubt there's food and resources, and sure, there is the biome system to keep themselves, warm and everything like that in Amity Coliseum, and possibly a certain level of oxygen, but I don't think there's enough resources to live up there indefinitely because they have an immortal that is coming after them, so I think this is kind of a death flag for Pietro and Maria, but Pietro's saying Penny should be on there as well. As the Winter Maiden, it would prevent Salem from being able to access the relic, and RWBY pretty much outright agrees. It's obvious she doesn't want that to be the case, but Penny is like, you need me here, right? You need your friends around, and RWBY is essentially saying, at least it could come across that way, that no, we don't need you here. It might be better that you are just out of reach from everyone, which from a completely logical standpoint, yes, I would agree. However, it's really hard to say. It would prevent Salem from getting the relic, but I'm sure she would be able to find some way to get up to Amity Coliseum. Whether it's 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, whatever it may be, Salem could just grow more Grimm forces. Sure, Grimm can't survive in the atmosphere, but Salem could find a way. Especially now having the Relic of Knowledge, all she needs to do is learn how to use it, wait 100 years, get 3 more questions, and ask Jin, how exactly would I be able to get up to the atmosphere without using Grimm, or something like that? There would be plenty of ways to get up there eventually, and since there is no way to kill Salem, you know, like, having Penny up there is probably not the right choice when you think about it, as she would be more useful on the ground. It is much more of a risk at this moment, but RWBY is actually going to point out something in a minute that does contradict the notion that it's a good idea that Penny stay up in Atlas. As Penny is coming to this sad realization that some people are going to have to make choices that they really don't want to make, and she's opening up the electrified door, everyone comes face to face with the Aesops, which of course is going to lead to conflict. Vine is the one who seems to step forward as the de facto leader and is requesting that Penny come back with them, that she return home and, of course, get the relic. Penny is saying that as long as Ironwood's mind of abandoning Mantle stays the same, I'm not going anywhere. Vine is, of course, criticizing her, saying, I thought you wanted to protect the people, not hurt them. Penny doesn't want to hurt everyone, and wouldn't hurt anyone, but Elm starts accusing her, saying that Winter is in critical condition because of her. Well, no, actually, if Cinder never showed up, then everything would have gone as planned, but, you know, Cinder attacking Winter and being the one who actually put Winter in that condition, a condition where I don't even know if she would be able to accept the Maiden powers in that state with her aura broken and things like that. So, yeah, of course, it's Penny's fault, not Cinder's, but of course the Aesops aren't there and only being fed information by the higher-ups, so they don't actually know. And then there's Harriet, who's not listening to anything that's being said. RWBY is trying to exclaim that no matter where you bring the relic, Salem will find it. Which means no matter where you would bring the Winter Maiden, Salem would be able to access that as well. So in my mind, it seems much better to have the Winter Maiden there on your side, trying to fight alongside you against Salem at that moment, rather than just give her the opportunity to go get her in the future. Same with the relic. Because Penny up in the atmosphere, the relic on Atlas raised up into the atmosphere, it's going to be the exact same situation. If Salem is able to get the relic when it's on Atlas in the atmosphere, she would be able to get Penny, the Winter Maiden, on Amity in the atmosphere. So, you know, it kind of is the exact same situation and is a bit contradictory in and of itself. But while Harriet is going after RWBY, she is able to goad Penny out, and when Penny takes 2 steps forward, the Aesops have a remote control for the door and re-electrifies it, trapping Penny from the rest of the group. So now it's 1v4 with the Aesops versus Penny, and Penny activates the Winter Maiden powers right out of the gate to fight against the Aesops. Though she is a very inexperienced maiden, hasn't really used the magic at all up until this point, I don't think, except for when she first got it and intimidating Cinder with it, but she creates a windstorm at this point to push all of the Aesops back. They are on a bridge, so it is possible for them to fall off, but their semblances seem pretty good at counteracting this, at least with 3 out of the 4 of them. Elm is able to root herself in place, Vine is able to use his semblance to grab on and prevent the wind from pushing him back, and Harriet can use her speed to counteract the force of the wind that's pushing her backwards. Marrow is just launched overboard and needs Elm to save him, but still, the fight goes on and we see hits getting brought in on both sides. Penny is certainly holding her own against the Aesops, all the while not using the Maiden powers that much. She makes the wind, but Vine is able to get behind her and land a few hits against her, as well as Harriet's able to land a few against her, but Penny is able to land some pretty heavy hits, especially against Harriet since she's more of the close combat fighter. But as the fight is going on, Penny uses her magic again to create storm clouds and create hail, though they're very small hail chunks. I'm guessing this is because of Penny's inexperience at using magic that she wasn't able to rain down larger ones, because these don't really seem that threatening, but it's enough to distract Marrow, knock him out of the way. Vine ends up saving him again, so Marrow seems to be the one getting knocked around quite a bit in this fight. And then we see that Vine is using his weapon of Thorn First time he's used it in the series thus far. Didn't use it at all throughout Volume 7, so I'm happy to see that at least getting some use. And then Elm actually is able to get behind Penny and grab a hold of her. And she deactivates the magic at that point, and the Aesops, for some reason, think that they won because, of course, physically restraining a maiden means that she can't use her magic. No, of course that's not the case, because then she blasts the magic outward with a large force of wind and blows everyone backwards. And then she ends up getting knocked off, but considering she can fly, she flies up in the air and is going to start charging the lasers. But now Marrow uses his semblance of stay. And so Penny is frozen in place in the air. So Marrow's semblance is quite unique and interesting. It stops the momentum of anyone and in any position that they are in within space itself. Stops the space around them and stops them in place. So if they were falling from a large height, he could stop them in place before they hit the ground. Very useful semblance, but very draining on his aura, as we see him exclaim a little bit later that he can't hold this for very long as she's brought down onto the platform and they're going to handcuff her. But on the other side of the door, we see Ruby, Weiss, Blake, and Nora struggling to open the door. Weiss uses her summon, but as the summon is slamming against it, as the Armagigas is trying to get through, it can't, and ends up hitting the electricity and disintegrating. And so they need some way to get through. But since it's an electrified door, Nora steps forward to take care of it, saying that she's only good for getting strong and hitting stuff, a statement that she had made previously when talking with Blake and Weiss, when they said maybe you should try taking this opportunity to figure out who you are. And Nora can't really see past herself being someone who just gets strong and hits stuff. So she uses her Magnhild, the metal hammer that she has, connects it right to the electricity, and charges up her semblance more than we've ever seen in the RWBY series. We've seen it a few times with very limited amounts of electricity, using the dust that was from Amity Coliseum and the lightning strike, the electrified bullets that RWBY has, as well as, of course, Hazel's electrification, where we saw her get extremely strong in that moment. But this is electricity that is funneled into an electrified door connected to Atlas's mainframe. This is essentially an unlimited supply of electricity that Nora can charge into herself, and her semblance does get overloaded. We see an electrified spider web almost crawl up Nora's skin as she's charging herself with this electricity. She gets stronger than she's ever been before, her hair's standing on end from the static, and she slams the door, causing it to explode and launch all of the Aesops backwards. So mission definitely successful, but after doing so, her aura breaks from having it exerted this much. She collapses, and we see that the electricity has left burn marks in the shape of that electrified spiderweb that was across her body. But now that Ruby, Weiss, and Blake are there to step forward and take the fight, the Aesops are now outnumbered. It was 4-1, now it's 5-4, or I guess 4-4 with Nora being out cold, but the Aesops have already taken some damage. We see that Ironwood was watching this fight all along, and he's once again pissed off, saying that this was their only chance to get the Winter Maiden. And as he's about to order all of the soldiers to converge on that point, Watts has a different idea. In fact, he has a message for the Aesops. They respond to the message, and Harriet's not exactly too thrilled to go along with it, but Marrow simply says, "I understand." And so the fight continues. Vine is able to easily use his semblance to knock Ruby, Weiss, and Blake clear off the platform. Ruby's able to hook on with her scythe and then use her semblance to get them back up, but that momentary gap in the forces is all that they need, as they want to converge on Penny. Harriet is able to get a hold of one of Penny's blades and rip it from her back. So now they're in possession of part of Penny's technology. So by the time that Ruby, Weiss, and Blake get back up to the platform, the Aesops decide that it's time to leave, and so they all do. Though we see Marrow being the last to leave, and he hesitates a fair bit. He looks at the rest of the group, looks down for a moment, and then jumps off the platform after the rest of his team. Even though Ruby, Weiss, and Blake think it's quite suspicious that they just grabbed Penny's blade and ran, they all need to care for Nora, as she's in a pretty bad shape. So they end up running from that compound, somehow being able to get back to the hangar and through the control room, likely again with Ruby's semblance, though they just didn't show it in this scene, getting to where the hangar is, finding May, who has hijacked a ship, and she is quite concerned seeing Nora in this state, like what the hell hell happened, but they all get on the ship and take off, escaping from Atlas. So my idea that Penny was going to use this to her advantage, go to Atlas and get the Relic of Creation at this time, was mistaken. But it's likely that she's going to end up returning after being hacked and, well, getting the relic after that point. As now being in the ship, she realizes that it's time for her to leave. And so RWBY and Penny hug, and RWBY exclaims that we'll see each other again really soon. And so Penny gives her final salute and takes off. So this doesn't raise any flags at all. Not at all. Saying, we'll see each other soon, I promise, really sounds like a red flag. A lot of flags raised in this episode. And the final scene that we see is the Aesops bringing Penny's blade to Ironwood, and then Ironwood handing it to Watts. So of course, now that Watts has a portion of Penny's technology, he'll be able to better understand it and be able to hack into her systems a lot easier, because she probably runs on her own code that Pietro designed, but now Watts can understand it as well, and possibly could lead to him being able to manufacture things similar to Penny in the future, if Watts survives this volume at all. But with that, the episode ends, and yeah, things aren't looking exactly great for their overall plan. They have the access to Amity Coliseum now, but now Watts has access to Penny, which he will likely do either next episode or the episode afterwards. And once the relic is removed from the vault, I kind of have a feeling that Ironwood's just going to put a bullet in Watts' head, because Watts is certainly going to betray Ironwood. We have the soldiers that are watching Watts currently, but they don't exactly know what Watts is doing, hitting all those keystrokes, and Watts, being as skilled as he is, would be able to manipulate things behind the scene and send signals to Salem, send signals to Cinder or Tyrion. Tyrion, most likely. He probably wouldn't contact Cinder. He doesn't really like her that much, but contact Tyrion or Hazel or someone in Salem's side, because I'm sure that some of them have scrolls or technology, be able to tell them what exactly is going on, tell them exactly where Penny is going, or even just get them into Atlas in general. With Watts now being at this security desk with clearance high enough to hack into Pietro's technology, well, he could probably access anything he wants to in Atlas, be able to run programs behind the scenes and just deactivate all of the security for when Salem makes her attack or when members of her forces try to get into Atlas in an effort to, of course, take the relic or just take out the military, those in charge, etc. I understand why Ironwood needs Watts at this point, because he's the only one who's able to compete with Pietro when it comes to technology and intelligence, etc. But yeah, it's definitely going to backfire on him, as he's being quite rash with his decisions, as we've seen previously. But let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. Do you think members of Salem's faction are already there? Like I pointed out, maybe Neo is already infiltrated Atlas. Wouldn't be too hard if she could cloak herself as an Elysian soldier. She's done that before. As well as Tyrion is going to be roaming around, possibly in Mantle, possibly in Atlas. We're going to see where all of the pieces end up falling and how things are going to play out. But Penny is certainly going to be hacked, taken control of, and the relic is definitely going to be removed from Atlas. We will see who ends up surviving by the end of it, but not looking that great. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I'm really curious to know what you guys think of this episode, of the little rematch that happened between the Aesops and most of Team RWBY, along with Nora and with Penny. I kind of feel like with Nora's semblance being pushed past its limits at this point, we may see a new evolution of sorts of her semblance. Or possibly this could be physically debilitating to her, having pushed her semblance and her body that far. I'm curious to see how that's going to unfold, but we will have to see. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. If you did and want to see more theories and RWBY videos like it, make sure to subscribe and join the Guild of the Eternal Flame. Tweet me at PhoenixKnight7, and I'll see you guys in the next video.